Now we are discussing various power supply connectors we are using in the motherboard. Why we require power supply connectors? Before we discuss power supply connectors, how we are getting the power supply? For our homes we get the power supply DC voltage or AC voltage. Which voltage we are getting for our homes? AC voltage. Very good. We are getting AC voltage. Now we are connecting our computer to that AC voltage. But our motherboard ICs, they require DC voltage. So we require some means. So we require some bridge which will convert this AC voltage to DC. That is what SMPS, switch mode power supply. This is capable of converting AC voltage to DC. But sir, motherboard, it takes only single DC voltage? No. Motherboard is taking many DC voltages, like it is taking 12 volts DC, 5 volts DC, 3.3 volts DC. These are the DC voltages we are seeing in nowadays. Even for our bike batteries, we can see on the Arduino we have 3.3 volts and 5 volts. These are the commonly used DC voltages. These three DC voltages we require a power supply. But that power supply should be capable of taking AC voltage, and that should give these three voltages as output. So that is switch mode power supply. Because we are taking more than one DC voltage, these DC voltages should be represented in different color wires. So for that, for 5 volts we represent red color wire, for 12 volts we represent yellow color wire. If you take any wire in the motherboard connectors, if you observe some yellow wire, it is saying I am carrying 12 volts DC. From where you are getting the DC? From the SMPS, where you are taking that DC to the motherboard. So now we are discussing main power connectors. These main power connectors are the important connectors which we are using for carrying this DC power supply for the motherboard. Initially, in 80 board connectors, we have two main connectors, two main power connectors. We are calling these as main power connectors because these are connected directly to the motherboard. So here these are P8 and P9. So first connector we are discussing is P8 and the second power connector we are discussing is P9. Remember, all these are power connectors, means these are carrying the power, means these are carrying the DC voltage if we talk in the low level. These all are carrying DC voltage. So all these are power connectors. P8, it is a power connector. P9, it is a power connector. These are the power connectors on the we use for the 80 board. So here P8 connector is having 6 pins, P9 connector is having the 6 pins. The configuration is orange, red, yellow, blue, black, black. In nowadays orange we use for the 3.3 volts. Here red represents plus 5 volts, yellow represents plus 12 volts, blue minus 12 volts, and black represents the ground. After these 6 pins, immediately we are connecting the two blacks. It is like here we are connecting orange, red, yellow, blue, black, black. Immediately we are connecting the black, black. Remember, we are not connecting in sequential way such that orange, red, yellow, black, black, and then we are connecting red, 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 white, black, black. We are making all these black wires should come at a single point. That's why we are starting here with black, black, and then white, red, red, red. But later ATX motherboard came. To power up this ATX motherboard, which is modern in nature compared to 80, because 15 years difference is there. So here we are using 20 plus 4 pin connectors. Initially on the ATX motherboard, we used 20 pin power connector. Later, we used extra 4 pins. But whenever a motherboard comes with a 20 pin power supply and 24 pin power supply, this 20 plus 4 pin connector is capable of giving supply to these two boards. We are additionally giving these 4 pins. Whenever I am writing 20 plus 4, it means If you discard those 4 pins, still it will work. Why you are writing 20 plus 4 means it is compatible with the 20 pin supply. It is also compatible with the 24 pin supply. So here this is ATX power connector. This is a 20 plus 4 pin connector. And the next power connector is P4 connector. This is ATX 12 volts connector. Sir, already you told we are having 20 plus 4 pin connectors. Are they not giving these 12 volts and 5 volts and 3.3? Yes, they are giving. But for what purpose again you are taking the 12 volts? Because I require a dedicated power supply for my processor. We discussed processor is like brain. So we require a dedicated power supply. That dedicated power supply we are giving by using this ATX 12 volts connector. Initially they used for the Pentium P4 processor. So that's why it is called as P4 connector. It is having 4 pins. As we discussed, we are using this for powering up the processor. So obviously yellow, black. Because processor requires 12 volt supply. Sir, whether it is i7 or i5 or i3 or i9, whatever the processor you take, each processor should be powered up by using the 12 volts. Processor may change, technology may change, generation may change. i7 third generation, 5th generation, 9th generation. But the power we are giving to the processor remained same. So here, because we are using the P4 connector, it is having 2 yellow pins and 2 black pins. Next we are using EPS 12 volts connector. Sir, why this EPS 12 volts connector? Here we have taken 4 pins. Initially, I want to turn on multiple processors at a time. At that time, they used this 8-pin EPS 12 volts connector. As already we discussed, we are giving this to power up the processor. Processor means definitely it requires 12 volts. But we are saying multiple processors. So here we are having 8-pin connectors, 4 yellow and 4 black. But why you are writing 4 plus 4? Because we discussed already, it should be compatible with the earlier P4 connectors also. So whenever we are using this EPS 12 volts, which is the advanced version of the P4, we can replace with the P4, we can replace the EPS 12 volts. The P4 can be replaced. At that time, I can connect, if the older board I am using, that older board can have the capability, that older board can have, the processor has the capability which can take 4 pins only. I can discard 4 pins. Yellow, black. But still those 4 pins are there. Yellow, black. Now, next we are discussing about Molex connector. Molex connector is also called as ATA connector. Advanced technology attachment. Because we are using this connector to power the attached devices. Sir, attached devices means fan. In CPU fan is there? Yes, CPU fan is there. In CPU fan is there or in entire computer fan is there? To give the cooling effect to the CPU, at the back side of the CPU, you can observe the fan. Sir, why for all devices, all components you are not giving the fan? Because CPU is the brain of the computer. If CPU gets heated up, the system will hang. We are giving the special effect to the CPU. CPU, don't worry, when you are getting heat, sir, why CPU is getting heated? Because it is an electronic device. When it operates for some amount of time, whether you take this tube light or fan, after turning on 1 hour, you just touch it, you will feel that heat. Similarly, when you are talking the mobile for 2 hours, if you just touch it, you will feel that heat because it is an electronic device. These electrons are taking that heat to be dissipated. So I want to make the CPU to be operated always. So I am giving a special fan to CPU. That fan, to give that power to that fan, we require a Molex connector. So here we are having 12 volts, 5 volts, yellow, black and red. 12 volts, initially we used to power up the IDE devices like hard disks and sometimes floppy drives also, but we have floppy drive connector also. Nowadays we are not using this Molex connector for the to power up the hard disk, because there is an advanced connector which is a SATA, serial advanced technology attachment. Whatever the hard disk you take, you observe the cable. It is a 15-pin cable. It is not an even number. It is an odd number. You see, all the numbers until now we discussed, they are even. But now this is an odd number. In these 15 pins, we can send the power and data. Out of all the connectors, which connector we discussed is capable of sending not only power but also data? This is SATA. Sir, this is DC power or AC power? No doubt at all. All the connectors we discussed, they are sending only DC, because power we are getting from the SMPS. So this 15-pin SATA cable, it will send the data along with the power. This we will use for connecting the hard disks and now modern day solid state drives, SSDs. And we have PCI Express power connector. PCI Express power connector we used, initially we discussed when a component fails, we use immediately this slot. But now we want to power up that. Additionally, compared to this 20+4, sometimes we require more power. At that time, we use this PCI expression power connector. Additionally, what is that additional? Can you give one example? Graphics card. Graphics card you want to power up. Sir, I have 12 volts, I can power up, but 75 watts, more than 75 watts. Modern day graphic cards, they are expecting more power. 150 watts I require, because he is using that for the gaming. We require 150 watts power. Then at that time we are giving additional power connector, that is PCI Express power connector, initially 6 pin and later 8 pin. Because it is replaced the 6 pin, we are saying it is a 6+2. What is the power supply? There is no doubt, 12 volts, yellow, 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 black, 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 because it is a video card. We require more power to power it up. And finally, nowadays we are not using the floppy drives, but initially, in initial days, we also had the floppy drive connectors. So we discussed what is SMPS. So input to the SMPS is an AC supply or DC supply? AC voltage or DC voltage? AC voltage. Output of the SMPS is DC voltage or AC voltage? DC voltage. We are getting only single DC voltage or multiple DC voltages? What are the different DC voltages? 12 volts we are getting, 5 volts we are getting. But all these voltages are DC only. So we have to represent with the different colors. Otherwise sometimes we may mistake, because all wires are at the same place. So yellow color we are using to represent the 12 volts. Orange color, red color, black color, blue color, white color. Very good. Apart from these, we have green and grey also. That present you do not require. The one we require to communicate from the SMPS to motherboard to at the time of the power on, and one is grey. Now we discussed initially P8 and P9 connectors. These are AT connectors or ATX connectors? AT connectors. What are how many pins P8 and P9 have? 6 pins. Very good, 6 pins. Sir, you said orange 3.3, but why here +5? This is initial days AT board we mentioned. Okay, right. Now with the configuration also we mentioned. Generally when we take the ground, all the black wires should be bunched and kept together. Later ATX, the ATX motherboard, to power up this ATX motherboard, how many pins we are using? 20+4. Either we can use 20 pins, that was the old board, or we can use the 24 pins. In these 24 pins we have 12 volts, we have 5 volts, we have 3.3 volts, -12, -5. To power the processor, we are using these 20+4 pins, or we are using additional power connector. What is that power connector name? P4 initially we used. P4 means Pentium 4. Okay, now here to power up the processor, how much voltage we require? 12 volts. So obviously this is black, yellow, yellow. And later this was replaced with EPS 12 volts. This is a 4-pin connector or 8-pin connector? Initially we used it to turn on the multiple CPUs. So 8 pins means 4 yellows and 4 blacks. Why we are not taking yellow, black, yellow, black, yellow, black, yellow, black? Same wires we want to bunch. That's why we are taking all blacks at one place and yellows at one place. If you see, the all wires will be bunched. And later we discussed about the Molex connector. In modern days, for what purpose we are using this connector? Fan. Why we require fan in the CPU? Already we have fan in the room. It will remove the heat of it will try to reduce. It will give that cooling effect only for the CPU. Fan is there only for the processor, remember, because processor is important to us. Okay, we are not giving fan to remaining anything. We are giving fan only for the processor. Right. Next we discussed SATA connector. We are calling this Molex connector as a ATA connector. ATA means advanced technology. SATA means serial attachment. Molex power connector, how many pins? 4 pins. In these 4 pins, 12 volts is also there, 5 volts is also there. Because initial days, they used it to power up the drives also. But nowadays we are using SATA. It is upgraded version of ATA. Serial ATA. 15 pin. Which power connector can send data and power? SATA. In the connectors we discussed, it is only SATA. Later we discussed about PCI Express power connector. Which power connector can power up your graphics card, video card? PCI. SATA is only for the hard disk power up. Hard disk, for powering up the hard disk we require. But for the graphics, we need PCI Express power connector with 6 pin or 8 pin or 6 plus 2 pin. Floppy drive connectors in nowadays we are not using. Okay, these are the main connectors. P8 connector, P9 connector, ATX 20 plus 4 connector, P4 connector, EPS 12 volts connector, Molex connector, SATA connector, PCI Express 6 pin or 8 pin connector, floppy drive connector. Okay, right, very good.